deep in the black void of space, far from the warm light of any friendly star, a group of alien ships floated in silence around a hidden station. The station belonged to the galactic Concord, a loose union of many species that had lived in peace for centuries. Their ships were sleek and colorful, made of smooth curves and glowing panels. But today, no one felt peaceful. Inside the main council chamber, tall beings with skin like polished stone stood around a large round table. Their leader, a wise old creature named Kaler, looked worried. His long fingers tapped the edge of the table. Next to him stood Lyra, a smaller alien with feathers that changed color when she was nervous. Right now, her feathers were dark gray. The Vorath are coming closer every day, Kaler said in a low voice. Their swarm ships have already destroyed 3 of our outer colonies. Our weapons are not strong enough. Our ships break too easily. A younger alien named Vorn spoke up. We have used every defense we know. Nothing stops them. The Vorath do not talk. They only consume. Lyra's feathers flickered to black. Then we must use the old beacon, the one from the first age. The room became very quiet. Everyone knew about the beacon. It was an ancient device locked away in the deepest part of the station. The story said it could call powerful beings from the edge of known space, beings so strong that even the oldest races feared them. But no one had used it in thousands of years. Some said it was dangerous. Others said the stories were just myths. Kaler looked at each council member. If we activate it, we admit we cannot win alone. We call for help from Deathworlders. Vorn's eyes widened. Deathworlders, those are legends. Monsters that live on worlds that kill everything weak. Legends or not, Kaler answered. The Vorat will kill us all if we do nothing. Prepare the beacon. Hours later, deep inside the station, technicians worked on the old machine. It looked like a tall crystal pillar, covered in strange symbols. When they turned it on, the pillar hummed with deep power. Blue light shot out in every direction. The message went far, farther than any normal signal. It carried simple words in many old languages. Help needed, deadly enemy attacks. Send Deathworlders now. Coordinates. Falu. The beacon sent the message into the dark, then it shut down. The council waited, hoping anything would answer. Far away, on the blue planet called Earth, things were very different. In a large underground base near the Pacific Ocean, screens covered the walls. Officers sat at their stations, watching data flow in. The room smelled like coffee and warm electronics. Admiral John Carter stood in the center. He was a tall man with short gray hair and calm blue eyes. He had spent 40 years in the fleet. Nothing surprised him anymore. Or so he thought. Lieutenant Daniel Hayes walked up. Quickly, sir, we have an intercept. It's not one of ours. The signal came from outside human space. John turned. Show me. Daniel tapped a console. A holographic map appeared. A bright red line stretched from deep space to Sol system. The message played in clear English. Deathworlders needed immediate aid. Required coordinates attached. Enemy swarm threatens all life. John stared at the words, Deathworlders. Daniel nodded. That's what they said. Sir, our linguists confirm it. The aliens used that exact term. A quiet laugh came from the back. Captain Laura Bennett stepped forward. She had red hair tied back in a sharp look in her eyes. They know about us, or at least the rumors everyone out there thinks humans come from a death world, tough gravity, wild animals, crazy weather. They think we're monsters. John rubbed his chin. They are not. Wrong, we survive things that kill most species, but why call us now? Scans show a massive fleet movement in that sector. Looks like insect-like ships, thousands of them. The senders are losing badly. John looked around the room. Every officer waited for his decision. He spoke slowly. If someone is asking for help against something that wants to wipe out whole systems, we cannot ignore it. Not when we can do something. He turned to the main screen. Send orders to all fleet commands. Full mobilization. The whole fleet is going out. The room exploded into action. Alarms sounded softly. Voices called out. Orders on every continent. Bases came alive. In orbit, huge shipyards opened their doors. Massive shapes began to move. Dreadnoughts, carriers, destroyers. The UNS Endurance, the biggest ship humanity had ever built, lit its engines. Captain Daniel Hayes transferred to her bridge as commander. Commander Laura Bennett took charge of the fast attack wing. Down on the surface, fighter pilots ran to their hangars. Kevin Morales, a young pilot with dark hair and a quick smile, climbed into his cockpit. First contact, he said to his wingmate. Megan, release. And it's a rescue mission. Not bad for Tuesday. Megan laughed as she checked her weapons. If these aliens think we're Deathworlders, wait till they see what we do when we're mad. In space, the fleet gathered. Over 2,000 ships formed up in perfect lines. They looked heavy and strong, covered in thick armor and long gun barrels. Human ships were not pretty. They were built to take hits and keep fighting. Redundant systems, extra engines, weapons that could break moons if needed. Admiral John Carter stood on the bridge of the UNS Vanguard, the fleet flagship. He watched the final ships join formation. Navigation plot jumped to the coordinates. All ships prepare for combat jump. The fleet waited like a sleeping giant. Then one by one, the drive cores glowed. White space folded around them. Back at the alien station, Kaler and the Council watched their sensors. Huge number of contacts appeared on the edge of their map. Too many. Too fast. Liara's feathers turned pure white with fear. What have we done? Kaler stared at the screen. We called for Deathworlders and they answered. All of them. The human Armada was coming. The Armada began to wake up across the entire solar system. It started quietly, like a giant stretching after a long sleep. In the huge orbital shipyards that circled Earth, massive doors slid open with a low rumble that vibrated through the metal frames. Lights flicked on inside the dark bays. Cranes moved slowly, pulling ships out into open space. The UNS Endurance was the first to emerge. She was a dreadnought longer than any skyscraper on Earth, with thick gray armor that looked dull but could stop almost anything. Her engines glowed a soft blue as they warmed up. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge. He wore a simple gray uniform with 4 stars on his shoulders. His face was calm, but his hands moved fast across the command panel. Status report, he said. A young officer named Sarah Lopez answered quickly. All sections report ready, Captain. Engines at full power, weapon systems green. Crew at battle stations. Daniel nodded. Good, signal the fleet. We form up in standard wedge formation. Vanguard takes point. Farther out near Mars, the carrier. Groups came alive. The UNS Vanguard was the biggest carrier humanity had built. Its flight decks were already busy. Fighters and bombers rolled into position. Pilots ran across the decks. Their flight suits. Kevin Morales climbed into his cockpit. Again, his fighter was small, fast, and covered in scars from training. Exercises. He patted the side of the craft like it was an old friend. Time to see if you still fly straight, he muttered. Megan Ruiz was in the next fighter over. She checked her helmet seal and gave Kevin a thumbs up through the canopy. Don't get lost out there, hotshot. Kevin grinned. Only if you promise not to shoot me by mistake. On the command deck of the Vanguard, Commander Laura Bennett watched the screens. She had short red hair and sharp green eyes. She spoke into her headset. All wings, this is Bennett. Launch in Sequence Alpha. No hot dogging. The pilots answered one by one. Their voices sounded excited. This was not another drill. This was real. The first time in 100 years that the full home fleet would leave Saw space together. Back on Earth in the main command center. Under the Rocky Mountains, Admiral John Carter watched everything happen. Large screens showed the fleet coming. Together, ships moved into place like pieces on a chessboard. 2,000 vessels in total. Dreadnoughts formed the heavy core. Carriers sat behind them with their fighter screens. Destroyers and frigates darted around the edges like guard dogs. John turned to his chief of staff, Captain Robert Klein. Any last messages from the aliens? Robert shook his head. Nothing new, sir. The beacon signal stopped after the first burst, but long-range probes show fighting in that sector. The swarm ships are still advancing. John looked at the map. The red enemy contacts were spreading like spilled ink. They called us Deathworlders. Let's make sure they never forget why. He pressed a button on his console. His voice went out to every ship in the fleet. This is Admiral Carter. Today we answer a call for help. An unknown enemy is trying to wipe out entire civilizations. We do not know them. We do not know their reasons, but we know what happens when someone tries to destroy life on that scale. We stop them. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is our job. That is why we built this fleet. Jump when ready. Make it clean. Make it fast. Carter out. A cheer rose up across the bridges and flight decks. Not loud, but real. Men and women who had trained for years felt the moment arrive. The fleet finished forming. It looked like a wall of metal and light stretching across space. No fancy colors, no smooth curves, just hard lines, heavy guns, and thick hulls. Human ships were made for one thing, to keep going when everything else broke. Navigation officers finished their calculations. The jump coordinates were locked. The drives began to charge. A low hum filled every ship. Blue energy gathered around the engines. On the Endurance, Daniel Hayes sat in his command chair. All ships, this is Endurance Actual. Jump in 3, 2, 1, execute. Space bent. White light flashed. The Armada vanished from Sol system. They came out on the other side in perfect order. The stars looked different here. No familiar constellations, just the cold black of deep space, and ahead the glow of battle. Alien scouts from the galactic conquered saw them first, small probe ships, floated near the edge of the war zone. Their sensors picked up the sudden arrival, thousands of contacts, big, heavy, moving fast. One scout sent an urgent message back to the station. Unknown fleet has arrived, size enormous, configuration does not match any known species. They are heading straight for the Voreth front. Kaler received the report in the council chamber. He stared at the new blip on the screen. So many, he whispered. Lyra stood beside him. Her feathers were still white. They came, all of them. Voreth looked afraid. What if the legends were wrong? What if we called something worse than they? Voreth. Kaler did not answer right away. He watched the human ship spread out. They did not hesitate. They did not wait for permission. They simply moved toward the enemy. On the bridge of the Endurance, Daniel Hayes studied the tactical display. Voreth hive ships filled the space. Ahead, they looked like giant black insects, with glowing red eyes. Smaller drones swarmed around them like angry bees. Enemy count, he asked. Over 3,000 Hive-class vessels, Sarah Lopez reported. Plus uncounted drones, conquered forces are down to less than 20% strength. Daniel took a slow breath. Then we have work to do. Signal all captains, engage at will. Priority targets are the large hive ships. Protect the alien survivors if possible. Laura Bennett's voice came over the fleet channel. Strike wings launching. Now we'll clear a path. Fighters poured out of the carriers. They formed up in tight groups and raced forward. Kevin and Megan led one squadron. Their ships twisted through space, engines burning bright. Here we go, Kevin said. Megan answered, stay on my wing, don't play hero. The first Voreth drones noticed the new arrivals. They turned as one and rushed toward the human fighters. The battle was about to begin. Back at the conquered station, the council watched in silence. The Deathworlders had arrived, not as a small rescue team, not as a legend, as an entire armada. Ready, angry, and very, very human. The void lit up with weapons fire. Armada pushed forward. The human fleet burst out of hyperspace like a storm, breaking over calm water. One moment the space was empty except for the dying flashes of alien weapons fire. The next moment, thousands of heavy warships filled the void. Their hulls caught the light from nearby stars and threw it back in dull silver flashes. The Voreth swarm paused for the first time since the attack began. On the bridge of the UNS Endurance, Captain Daniel Hayes leaned forward. His chair. The main screen showed the battlefield in bright colors. Red for Voreth, blue for the battered galactic conquered ships, and now a solid wall of green for the human armada. Enemy reaction, Daniel asked. Sarah Lopez, a tactical, answered fast. Voreth drones are turning toward us. Hive ships are shifting formation. They see us as the new threat. Daniel gave a small nod. Good, let them focus on us. All ships hold position. Do not advance yet. Let the fighters clear the way. Out in front, the carrier wings launched their full strength. Hundreds of small fighters streaked forward. Kevin Morales led his squadron in a tight arrowhead. His hands were steady on the controls. The cockpit shook as engines pushed him hard. Bandits at 12 high, Megan Ruiz called over the comm. They look angry. Kevin laughed once. They don't know angry yet. The Vorath drones came in waves. They moved like insects, fast, jerky, no fear. Their bodies were black shells with glowing red slits for eyes, sharp legs, ended in blades, small energy weapons. Spat green fire. Kevin rolled his fighter left. A drone missed him by meters. He pulled the trigger. Twin rail guns barked, solid. Slugs punched through the drone's shell. It exploded in a quiet puff of fire and debris. Clean kill, he said. Megan was already on another. Her fighter danced between two drones. She fired missiles. The missiles locked and chased their targets. Bright flashes lit the space as 3 drones died at once. The human fighters cut through the swarm like knives through soft cloth. They were smaller and slower than some alien craft, but the pilots flew them with skill born from Earth's hard gravity and wild weather. Every move was sharp, every shot counted. Back on the conquered station, Kaler and the council watched through long-range feeds, their mouths opened in shock. Lyra whispered, "They fight like they were born for it." Vorn pointed at the screen. "Look at their ships, they take hits and keep coming. Our cruisers would be gone by now." A conquered liaison ship, small and damaged, sent a tight beam message to the Endurance. A shaky voice came through. "Human vessels, this is Conquered. Light of Hope. We received your arrival. The beacon was a mistake. We did not mean to call. Deathworlders, please identify yourselves." Daniel Hayes answered calmly. His voice went out clear and strong. "This is Captain Daniel Hayes of the United Nations ship Endurance. We received your distress call. You asked for Deathworlders. We are here. What do you need?" Silence stretched for a long second. The alien voice returned, higher now, almost panicked. We thought the old stories spoke of mythical beasts, apex predators from nightmare worlds, not people, not an entire fleet. This was an error. Translation: we are sorry, you do not need to. Daniel cut in. You have a swarm trying to eat your worlds. We are here to stop them. Apologies later. Right now we fight. He closed the channel. On the Vanguard, Commander Laura Bennett smiled dimly. They sound scared of us. Admiral John Carter, watching from his flagship, spoke over the fleet-wide line. They should be. Everyone else is. The Vorath Hive ships finally reacted. The largest ones turned their huge bodies toward the human fleet, glowing. Tubes along their sides opened. Beams of green energy lashed out. The first hit struck the forward dreadnoughts. Thick armor glowed red where the beams touched. Some plates melted. But the ships did not stop. Repair drones crawled over the damage like ants. Fresh armor plates slid into place from inside. Minimal effect, Sarah Lopez reported. Shields at 80%, armor holding. Daniel smiled for the first time. Return fire, full kinetic barrage. The Endurance's main gun spoke. Long barrels spat streams of heavy slugs. Each round traveled so fast it looked like solid lines of light. The slugs slammed into the nearest hive ship. Chunks of black shell flew off, green blood sprayed into space. Other human ships joined in. Railguns roared, missile bays opened. Hundreds of warheads streaked toward the enemy. Explosions bloomed across the Vorath line. The aliens had never seen anything like it. Vorath fought delicate species, quick ships, energy shields, precise weapons. Humans fought dirty. They used mass, they used speed, they used sheer stubborn strength. Boarding teams prepared on the troop. Transports, soldiers in heavy powered armor checked their rifles. One squad leader, Sergeant Emily Grant, spoke to her team. We go in hard, we break their hive. Mind no prisoners, no mercy, clear. The soldiers answered as one, clear. The first human boarding pods launched. They looked like thick arrows with engines. They flew straight into the holes blasted in the hive ships. Explosive charges blew open the holes. Soldiers poured out. Inside the alien ships, it was dark and wet. Walls pulsed like living flesh. Vorath warriors, big armored bugs with claws, rushed to meet them. The humans opened fire. Bullets tore through shells. Grenades exploded in tight groups. Emily Grant kicked down a membrane door. Her team followed. They moved room to room. Whenever a Vorath appeared, they shot it. Whenever they found a control node, they planted charges. On the outside, the battle grew bigger. Vorath ships tried to ram the human dreadnoughts. The big ships simply pushed back. Their mass was too great. The smaller Vorath vessels crumpled against thick hulls. Kevin Morales flew through a cloud of debris. A drone tried to ram him. He rolled at the last second. The drone hit a piece of wrecked hive ship and exploded. Nice try, Kevin muttered. Megan called squadron form up. We're going for that big hive in Sector 5. It's the one spitting the most drones. They turned as one. Engines burned. Missiles locked. The conquered ships, what was left of them, began to pull back. They watched the humans fight. Hope returned to their crews for the first time in days. Taylor spoke quietly in the council chamber. They are not myths, they are worse. They are real, and they came when we called. The battle was turning. The Deathworlders had arrived, and the Vorath were learning what that truly meant. The battle grew louder and faster. Explosions lit up the dark space like sudden stars. Human ships pushed forward without stopping. Vorath hive ships tried to swarm them, but the Deathworlders met every attack head on. On the bridge of the UNS Endurance, Captain Daniel Hayes watched the tactical screen. Red enemy markers still filled half the display, but the green human markers moved deeper into their lines every minute. Status on boarding teams, Daniel asked. Sarah Lopez checked her panel. Sergeant Grant's squad taken control of the secondary hive core on target 3. They're planting charges now. Other teams report heavy fighting, but steady progress. Daniel nodded. Tell them to hurry. We need that hive mind broken soon. Out in the fighter screen, Kevin Morales flew low over a damaged hive ship. Smoke and green fluid leaked from its wounds. Vorath drones chased him in tight loops. He rolled hard, pulled up, and fired his cannons. 2 drones burst apart. Still got 6 on me, he said into the come. Megan Ruiz appeared on his wing. Her fighter flashed past and cut down 3 of the pursuers with a quick missile. Burst. Make that 3. Stay close. Kevin, we're going after the Queen. Beacon on the big one ahead. The largest Vorath hive ship loomed in front of them. It was the size of a small moon. Thick tubes ran along its back like veins. A bright red pulse came from the center. That was the Queen beacon, the signal that kept the whole swarm moving as one. Kevin checked his fuel. Low on missiles. We'll have to get in close. Megan answered. Then we get close. Follow my lead. Their fighters dove toward the giant ship. Point defense weapons tried to hit them. Green bolts filled the space. Kevin twisted left then right. A bolt grazed his wing. Alarm screamed in his cockpit. Shields down 10%, he called. Megan fired her last missiles. They struck the beacon dome. A bright flash opened a hole. That's our door. Go. Both fighters flew straight into the breach. Inside the hive was a maze of wet tunnels and pulsing walls. They landed on a wide platform. Cockpits opened. The pilots jumped out in flight. Suits with sidearms. Voreth warriors rushed them, big ones with claws and armored shells. Kevin raised his pistol. He fired twice. Bullets punched through weak spots. Warrior fell. Megan was already moving this way. The beacon core is deeper. They ran through the dark halls. Alarms wailed around them. More warriors came. The pilots fought back-to-back. Shots echoed. Bodies fell. They reached the core chamber. A huge crystal pulsed red. In the center, tendrils of green energy wrapped around it. Kevin pulled the demolition charge from his pack. This will do it. He set the timer. They ran back the way they came. Behind them the charge exploded. The whole ship shook. The red pulse died. The Queen beacon went dark. Outside the swarm changed. Voreth drones stopped moving in perfect order. Some flew in circles. Others attacked each other. The hive mind was broken. On the Endurance, Sarah Lopez shouted, enemy coordination dropping fast. Drones are breaking formation. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. All ships press the attack. Finish them. The human fleet surged forward. Dreadnoughts opened full broadsides. Rail guns roared. Missile salvos lit up. Like fireworks, hive ships cracked open. One after another, pieces floated away. In silence, a conquered cruiser limped close to the Vanguard. Its captain sent another message. Human commander, this is light of hope. The swarm is collapsing. We owe you everything. Commander Laura Bennett answered from her station. You called, we came. Now let's end this. Admiral John Carter watched from the Vanguard bridge. He spoke quietly to his executive officer. Signal all captains. Form the wall. The fleet moved into a new shape. Dreadnoughts and heavy cruisers lined up. Side by side, they formed a solid wall of guns and armor. Behind them, carriers launched fresh fighters to hunt down the last drones. The final Voreth push came. Hundreds of hive ships charged straight at the human line. They fired every weapon they had. Green beams struck the wall. Armor glowed. Some plates buckled. But the ships held. Shields at 60% across the line. A voice reported. John Carter's voice stayed calm. Hold steady. Return fire on my mark. He waited one more second. Then he gave the order, mark. The wall answered. Every gun fired at once. A solid curtain of kinetic rounds and missiles flew toward the enemy. The Voreth front line vanished in bright flashes. The second line broke apart. The third turned to run, but there was nowhere to go. Human destroyers had already circled around. They cut off the retreat. The last hive ships died under combined fire. In the conquered station, the council stared at their screens. The red markers were almost gone. The green one stood strong. Kaler spoke in a low voice. It is over in hours. They did in hours what we could not do in weeks. Lyra's feathers slowly returned to soft blue. They are not Deathworlders. They are something more. They are protectors. Vorn shook his head. Protectors who scare even us. On the battlefield, human ships began to slow. Fighters returned to carriers. Boarding teams pulled back with their wounded. Medics worked fast in the troop bays. Sergeant Emily Grant stepped out of her pod onto the Endurance deck. Her armor was covered in green blood and dents. She pulled off her helmet. Her face was tired but proud. Daniel Hayes met her at the airlock. "Good work, Sergeant." Emily gave a short nod. "We lost 6. But we got the job done." Daniel put a hand on her shoulder. "You did more than that. You broke their spine." Across the fleet, crews cheered quietly. Not wild cheers, just tired, satisfied sounds. They had come, they had fought, they had won. The last Vorcha ship exploded far away. Silence returned to the battlefield. Only human ships remained, battered but whole. Admiral John Carter opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Carter, well done. The threat is ended. Casualties were light. Damn it. Is repairable. We saved lives today. Many lives. Take a moment, then prepare to stand down. We still have a long trip home." He closed the channel and looked out the viewport. The stars looked the same, but everything else had changed. The aliens who had called in fear now watched in awe. The Deathworlders had not just answered. They had crushed the nightmare that threatened the galaxy. And they had done it without hesitation. The fighting stopped as suddenly as it had started. One by one, the last Vorcha ships broke apart or drifted dead in space. Their green glows faded to black. Silence filled the void where explosions had roared only minutes before. Human ships held their positions. No cheers filled the comms yet. Everyone was still breathing hard, still checking for threats. On the bridge of the UNS Endurance, Captain Daniel Hayes stood up from his chair. He looked around at his crew. Faces were tired. Some had small cuts from flying, debris that got through shields. But eyes were bright. They had one damage report, Daniel said quietly. Sarah Lopez scanned her panel. Hull breaches sealed, casualties light. 3 fighters lost, 15 crew injured. None critical, all boarding teams back aboard. Daniel nodded once. "Good, stand down. Weapons, maintain alert, but let the crews rest in shifts." Across the fleet, similar orders went out. Pilots guided their fighters back to carrier decks. Kevin Morales landed his craft with a soft thud. He opened the canopy and climbed out. His legs felt heavy. Megan Ruiz landed next to him. She pulled off her helmet and shook out her hair. Kevin looked at her. "We did it." Megan gave a tired smile. "Yeah, we did." They walked together toward the ready room. Other pilots clapped them on the shoulders as they passed. No big words, just quiet nods. That was enough. Admiral John Carter stood on the Vanguard Bridge. He watched the battlefield clear. Small repair ships moved between the larger vessels, welding plates and replacing damaged parts. The Armada looked bruised but strong. Most ships could still fight if needed, but the enemy was gone. He opened a channel to the Concord station. "This is Admiral John Carter of the United Nations Fleet, the Vorath. Threat has been eliminated. Your worlds are safe. We stand ready to assist with cleanup and medical aid if required." The answer came quickly. Kaler's voice sounded different now. Not afraid, not panicked, just very small. "We have no words. You came, you fought. You won. In a single day. Our people will never forget this. John answered simply. We answered a call for help, that is all. He closed the channel and turned to his officers. Prepare a delegation. We will meet them face to face on neutral ground. The Endurance main hangar in 2 hours. 2 hours later, a small Concord shuttle docked with the Endurance, the airlock. Cycled Kaler stepped out first. He was taller than most humans with skin like dark stone. Lyra followed, her feathers now a calm pale green. Vorn came last, looking around with wide eyes. Daniel Hayes waited at the end of the ramp. He wore a clean uniform, no weapons. Behind him stood Admiral Carter, Commander Laura Bennett, and a small honor guard. Kaler stopped a few steps away. He bowed low. We called you Deathworlders. We thought it was a myth, a story to scare children. We were wrong. You are real and you are terrifying. John Carter stepped forward. We are human. We come from a hard world. It made us tough. It made us stubborn. When someone asks for help against something that wants to destroy everything, we come. Simple as that. Lyra spoke softly. Your ships took hits that would have broken ours. Your people fought inside the hives like it was nothing. We saw it all. We are grateful and we are afraid. Daniel smiled a little. Fear is fine as long as it's not aimed at the wrong people. They walked together to a large meeting room. Tables had been set with simple food and water. No grand feast, just enough to show respect. The aliens sat carefully. Their long limbs looked awkward in the human chairs. Kaler spoke again. We wish to offer alliance, full alliance. Our council has already voted. Your fleet, your people. You saved us. We want to stand with you, not behind you, beside you. John looked at him for a long moment. We do not ask for thanks, but we do not turn away friends. Alliance accepted on equal terms. The room relaxed a little. Liara's feathers brightened. Vorn even smiled. After the meeting, the humans and aliens walked to the main viewport. It looked out over the battlefield. Human ships moved slowly, helping damaged, conquered vessels. Repair teams worked side by side. Fighters flew escort for alien shuttles, carrying wounded. Kevin Morales and Megan Ruiz stood near the glass. They watched a conquered ship being towed by a human frigate. Kevin said, they called us monsters. Now they're thanking us. Megan shrugged. Let them call us what they want. We know what we are. Back on the bridge, Daniel Hayes received final reports. The Armada was ready to jump home. Minor repairs would finish en route. Crews would get leave. Life would go back to normal. Almost. Admiral Carter gave the order. All ships prepare for return jump. Coordinates set for Saul. Let's go home. The fleet formed up again, not in battle lines this time, in a calm, steady formation. Drives hummed, space folded. Once more, they came out near Earth. The blue planet looked peaceful. Home. News spread fast across the galaxy. Other species heard the story. The Voreth were gone. A new power had appeared, not conquerors, not invaders, protectors. When called, they came in force. They fought hard. They won fast, and they left without taking anything. Some races whispered the word Deathworlders with respect now. Others with caution, but all knew one thing: if a true threat ever rose again, the humans would answer. On Earth, people watched the returning fleet from news feeds. Families cheered in living rooms. Children pointed at the sky when the ships passed overhead. Veterans stood a little straighter. Admiral John Carter stood alone on the Vanguard observation deck. Earth turned slowly below him. He thought about the beacon, about the mistake, about the call that brought in entire Armada across the stars. He spoke to no one. Next time they won't need to apologize for calling us. The fleet docked, crews went home, ships went into refit, life moved on. But in quiet moments, when humans looked at the stars, they remembered they were Deathworlders, not because their world tried to kill them every day, but because when the galaxy needed someone to stand up, they stood, all of them together. And that was enough. Months later, a small alien delegation arrived at Earth. They brought gifts, seeds from their worlds, art, stories. They came without fear this time. They came as friends. Kaler met John Carter one last time on a quiet balcony overlooking the Pacific. The sun was setting, the water looked like gold. Kaler said, "You changed everything. Not just the war, the way we see ourselves, the way we see you." John looked out at the horizon. "We just did what needed doing." Kaler nodded slowly. "And that is why we will never call anyone else first again." They stood in silence as the stars came out. Somewhere far away, other worlds watched, waiting, knowing that if darkness ever came again, the Deathworlders would answer. The Armada rested, but it was ready.